that Jack wasn't supposed to notice it. The subtle change in Allison's posture, the way her eyes darted to her phone, as if it was pulling her attention from him. At first, it seemed innocent, just a quick glance while they were seated at their usual table in the upscale French restaurant. They had come to celebrate the close of a successful deal Jack had sealed earlier that day. Yet, something in her demeanor felt off. As Jack raised his glass of wine, pretending not to notice, Allison's lips curled into a tight smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Her hand casually reached for her phone again, her fingers moving quickly under the table. A soft buzz. Buzz. Jack's gut tightened. He had always trusted Allison. They had been through so much together, hard financial times, the constant struggle of trying to conceive, and the countless nights where they'd comforted each other over dreams that hadn't quite materialized. But this moment, with the dim lights casting shadows across her face, felt different. "I'll be right back," she said suddenly, standing up and smoothing down her dress. "Just need to freshen up." Her voice was too sweet, too casual, as if trying too hard not to raise suspicion. Jack watched her leave, her phone still clutched tightly in her hand. A heavy knot of dread formed in his stomach. There had been a time when he would have brushed it off, but lately Allison had been distant, and tonight her distraction was impossible to ignore. Curiosity gnawed at him. He leaned forward, glancing at the phone she'd left behind on the table. It buzzed again. He hesitated, but the pull was too strong. He reached for it, unlocking the screen with the passcode he knew by heart. The message popped up. From someone named Simon. "So looking forward to this weekend. $2 million is still on the table. Let me know when you're ready to confirm." Jack's world tilted. For a moment, I just sat there staring at the message like it was written in some foreign language. The words swirled in my head, refusing to make sense. $2 million. What weekend? My mind struggled to catch up like a slow computer trying to process too much data at once. It felt like time had stopped, like the entire bustling restaurant faded away, leaving only me, the phone, and those cursed words from Simon. I couldn't breathe. My throat constricted, and I put the phone down as if it were something toxic. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a drum in my ears. Allison, my Allison, was talking about a weekend with another man for $2 million. The room was spinning. I swallowed hard, willing myself not to panic, not to overreact. But how could I not? How could anyone? I tried to think, tried to rationalize. Maybe I'm misreading this, I thought. Maybe it's some kind of sick joke or a misunderstanding. Allison couldn't, she wouldn't let you do something like this. But the sinking feeling in my gut told me otherwise. Something had changed in her over the last few months. The distant looks, the way she stayed late at work more often, the way she sometimes flinched when I touched her like she wasn't all there with me anymore. But $2 million. Was this some kind of arrangement? My mind reeled at the thought. We weren't desperate. Sure, we weren't swimming in cash, but we were okay. Or so I thought. I grabbed the phone again, my fingers trembling as I scrolled through the messages. It was all there. The back and forth discussions between her and Simon, a wealthy man I had only heard in passing, some big shot in the real estate world. They had been talking for weeks. No, months. Every message I read felt like another knife in my chest, each word cutting deeper than the last. "I can make your dreams come true, Allison. Don't worry, I'll keep it discreet. Just us. No one needs to know. The money's ready whenever you are. Just say the word." It wasn't just the money. The bastard was seducing her, playing on her insecurities, promising her the life she thought we could never afford. Our conversations about starting a family, buying a bigger house, they were all twisted into this sick game. And Allison, my wife, was considering it. Or maybe she had already, she agreed. I heard the faint click of her heels on the restaurant's marble floor, and I barely had time to put her phone back on the table before she slid back into her seat. All smiles. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice syrupy sweet, as if nothing had happened, as if she wasn't contemplating selling herself to another man for millions. So I couldn't look at her, not right away. My hands clenched around the fork, knuckles white. So I took a deep breath, fighting the rage that was building inside me. Every instinct screamed at me to confront her right then and there, to throw the phone in her face and demand answers. But I couldn't. Not in public, not in front of the waiters and diners who might overhear every bitter word. Instead, I met her gaze and forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Yeah, everything's fine." It was a lie. Nothing was fine anymore. We finished dinner in tense silence. I barely tasted the food. My mind was already racing ahead to what I needed to do. The evidence was there, in her phone. Allison was hiding this secret from me, thinking I was clueless. But now, I had the upper hand. As we left the restaurant, her hand slipped into mine, but the warmth was gone. The connection we once had, the trust, was shattered. and she didn't even know it yet. Not yet. Part 3. The confrontation brewing. The drive home was agonizingly quiet. Allison hummed along to some soft jazz playing through the car speakers, but it felt like the soundtrack to a nightmare. My mind buzzed with everything I had read. Her messages to Simon, his promises, her careful, calculated responses. It wasn't just betrayal, it was manipulation. She had played me for a fool, all while I thought we were working towards the same future. She hadn't noticed my change in demeanor, or maybe she was just pretending not to. Either way, the silence was thick between us. My hands gripped the steering wheel tighter than they needed to, knuckles white, jaw clenched. I tried to steady my breathing, but it came out ragged. The rage was simmering just beneath the surface, threatening to boil over. "Jack," Allison said, breaking the silence, her voice light, casual. "That dinner was wonderful, wasn't it? I think we should do things like that more often." She leaned over, placing her hand on my arm as if everything was normal. I fought the urge to jerk my arm away, the contact suddenly repulsive. "Yeah," I muttered, forcing the words out. "Wonderful." She didn't press further, probably assuming my moodiness was related to work. It made me sick to think she was carrying on this charade so smoothly, so effortlessly. My mind flashed back to the messages, her thanking Simon for his offer, mentioning how she was thinking it over. The words were burned into my brain, impossible to forget. We pulled into the driveway, and Allison smiled as she stepped out of the car. "I'm going to take a bath, relax a little," she said, already making her way to the front door. I watched her walk inside, every step calculated, every motion seemingly innocent. But now I saw through it all. Everything felt like a performance. I stayed in the car for a few more minutes, gripping the steering wheel so hard my hands hurt. My chest felt tight, the weight of what I had uncovered pressing down on me. The anger was there, but beneath it, something worse, something deeper. Hurt. The kind that twists your insides and makes you question every moment, every memory you shared with someone you thought you knew. How long had she been doing this? How long had she been slipping away from me? So eventually I forced myself to move. I got out of the car, the cool night air hitting my face like a slap. I needed to confront her, but I didn't know how. Part of me wanted to explode, to scream at her and demand to know why she would even entertain such an offer. But another part of me, a weaker part, wanted to hear her explanation, to give her a chance to tell me it wasn't what it wasn't like. I walked inside, finding her upstairs in the bathroom, just as she said. The door was cracked open, steam spilling out. I could hear the soft splash of water, the faint hum of a tune she was singing under her breath. She sounded so calm, like nothing was wrong, like she wasn't considering spending the weekend with a man for $2 million. I stood there just outside the door, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I had to confront her, to lay it all out. But the words wouldn't come. I stood frozen, every possible scenario running through my mind. Every confrontation, every answer, every lie. I needed to hear the truth. With a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The door creaked as I pushed it open, the sound echoing in the steamy bathroom. Allison was reclining in the tub, her back turned to me, her hair pinned up, the water rippling around her shoulders. She didn't hear me come in, humming softly to herself, completely unaware that the delicate balance of our lives was about to shatter. I stood there watching her for a moment. How many times had I seen her like this? Calm, beautiful, the picture of serenity. But now all I could see was her betrayal. The image of her messaging Simon, negotiating our marriage for $2 million, flashed before my eyes. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, and the words I'd been holding back burned in my throat. "Allison," I said, my voice low and strained. She jumped slightly, her head whipping around to see me standing there. Her eyes widened, but she quickly masked the surprise with a smile. A fake smile, the kind that used to fool me. "Oh, Jack, you scared me," she said, her tone light, too casual. "I didn't hear you come in." "What's wrong?" Everything was wrong. I took a step closer, feeling the tension in my chest build like a storm. "I need to ask you something," I said, my voice shaking despite my best efforts to stay calm. She tilted her head, a slight frown creasing her forehead. "Sure, what's on your mind?" I didn't respond immediately. My heart pounded as I pulled her phone from my pocket, holding it up for her to see. The message from Simon was still open, the words glaring at us both like a neon sign in the darkness. Her face went pale instantly. The casual mask slipped, and for the first time I saw something real. Fear. "What's this, Allison?" I asked, my voice low, almost a growl. "What are you doing talking to Simon Armitage about $2 million? What kind of weekend is he offering you?" The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Her mouth opened, but no words came out at first. I could see the wheels turning in her head, the panic rising in her eyes, as she tried to figure out what to say, how to spin this, how to make me believe anything that would make this go away. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Jack, it's not what you think." I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh and foreign to my own ears. "Really? Because it sure as hell looks exactly like what I think. You were planning to spend the weekend with him. For money." Her eyes welled up with tears and she scrambled for an explanation. "Jack, please, listen to me. It was just talk, just an idea. I wasn't going to go through with it. I swear." "And you weren't going to go through with it?" I repeated, disbelief and anger twisting my words. "Allison, I read the messages. You were considering it. You didn't shut him down. You played along. How long has this been going on?" Tears spilled down her cheeks and she wiped them away with the back of her hand. "I don't know. It started months ago. He offered me the money and I was scared. We've been struggling and I thought maybe." "Maybe what? That you could sell yourself to him for a weekend and solve our problems?" My voice cracked, the hurt rising up through the anger. "How could you even consider this? How could you betray me like this?" She sobbed, her body shaking as she hugged her knees to her chest. "I never meant for it to go this far. I love you, Jack. I love you, and I was desperate. I wasn't going to do it, I swear." I stood there, staring at the woman I thought I knew, the woman who was now a stranger to me. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have ever imagined, and for the first time in my life, I didn't know what to say to her. "I need time to think," I said, my voice cold. "I don't know what happens next, but I need to be away from you right now." Without waiting for her to respond, I turned and walked out of the bathroom, leaving her sobbing in the tub. The truth finally laid bare between us. I closed the bathroom door behind me and leaned against it, my head spinning. Allison's sobs echoed through the walls, but I couldn't bring myself to feel anything other than a cold, hollow emptiness. I had imagined this moment over and over again since I found that message at the restaurant. I had thought the confrontation would give me some kind of clarity, some satisfaction from exposing her lies. But now, standing here with the truth out in the open, I felt worse than I ever thought possible. I walked down the hall and into our bedroom. The bed we shared, the pictures on the walls, everything felt foreign now. It was like our entire life together had been a facade and I had been the only one who didn't know it. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring blankly at the floor, trying to make sense of it all. How had we come to this? How had Allison, the woman I loved, the woman I trusted with everything, considered doing something so unthinkable? The answer, of course, was obvious. It wasn't about love. It was about money. And I knew things had been tight lately. We had talked about it, how we needed to budget better, how we wanted to start a family, but didn't feel financially secure enough yet. But in all those conversations, I never imagined she would take it this far. Allison had always been practical, logical. Desperate, though? I never saw that in her. And yet, here we were $2 million from Simon Armitage for a weekend of her time. A sick feeling churned in my stomach. I thought back to the messages, to the way she had responded to him. She had never outrejected the offer, never told him no. Instead, she had entertained it, danced around the idea. And that hurt more than anything. She had betrayed me long before she ever set foot in his presence. I stood up, my mind racing. I couldn't stay here. Not tonight. I needed air, space, time to process everything that had happened. I grabbed my jacket from the closet and made my way downstairs. As I reached the front door, I hesitated. Part of me wanted to go back, to try and talk it out with her, to demand more answers. But I knew it wouldn't matter. There was no answer she could give that would make this right. No excuse that would erase the fact that she had considered sleeping with another man for money. I stepped outside into the cool night air, feeling it bite at my skin, but I welcomed the discomfort. It was better than the numbness I had been drowning in. The street was quiet, the world around me carrying on as if nothing had changed. But for me, everything had. I walked aimlessly, my feet moving without direction. My mind kept returning to the same question. How did I not see this coming? I replayed the last few months in my head, looking for signs I had missed, moments when I should have known something was wrong. The late nights at work, the distant look in her eyes, the vague answer she gave when I asked about her day. I had chalked it up to stress, thinking we were both just overwhelmed by life. But now, with everything laid bare, I realized I had been blind. I stopped at a park bench and sat down, staring at the empty playground in front of me. It was late and no one else was around. The quiet was almost suffocating. I had come out here for clarity, but the more I thought about it, the more lost I felt. The Allison I knew, the woman I had fallen in love with, would never have done this. But the woman back there crying in the bathroom wasn't the same person anymore. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to turn back and fix this, to pretend like we could move past it. But deep down, I knew that wasn't possible. This kind of betrayal doesn't just go away. It festers, it grows, and eventually it consumes everything. And no amount of apologies could change that. I sat there for what felt like hours just thinking. When I finally stood up, one thing was clear: my marriage was over. Whether I liked it or not, I couldn't come back from this. I started walking again, heading back towards the house. The time had come to decide what came next. So at the time I made it back to the house, the night had deepened, the world outside quiet and still. Inside, everything felt eerily calm too, as if the storm of emotions had passed, leaving only a broken stillness in its wake. I stood at the front door for a long moment, staring at it, my hand hovering over the knob. This was the place that had once been my refuge, my safe space, but now it felt like a stranger's home. Cold, empty. I stepped inside and immediately heard the faint sound of Allison's sobs. It seemed she hadn't left the bathroom. I thought about going to her, saying something, but what was there left to say? Her crying was just noise to me now, like the distant echo of something that had already died. I headed upstairs, each step heavy, my mind made up, but my heart still reluctant to fully accept what I knew had to happen. As I entered our bedroom, I saw the suitcase lying open on the floor. I had half-packed it earlier, but now I needed to finish the job. My hands moved automatically, grabbing shirts, pants, shoes, anything I could shove into the suitcase without thinking too hard. Each item I threw and felt like another piece of our life together that was unraveling. The happy memories we had built, the plans we had made, all of it felt like it was slipping through my fingers. But I couldn't hold on to it, not anymore. I zipped the suitcase shut, the sound cutting through the silence like a blade. This was real now. I was leaving. I heard the soft creak of the bathroom door opening, and I turned to see Allison standing there, her face red and blotchy from crying. Her eyes were wide, still full of that same desperation, but there was something else now, something broken. "Jack." Her voice was barely above a whisper, shaking like she was struggling to hold herself together. "You're really leaving?" I nodded, not trusting myself to speak just yet. There was a lump in my throat, and I knew that if I opened my mouth, all the anger, all the hurt would come spilling out in ways I couldn't control. So I wasn't ready for that. Not now. She took a step closer, wrapping her arms around herself like she was trying to hold onto some last shred of warmth. "Please, just stay. Let's talk. I made a mistake. I was stupid and I was scared, but I wasn't going to do it. You have to believe me." I closed my eyes, her words washing over me like waves crashing against a rock. I had heard them before. The excuses. The apologies. And maybe part of me still wanted to believe her, to believe that this was just some horrible lapse in judgment that we could move past. But the truth was, she had already crossed a line. Whether or not she went through with it didn't matter anymore. The damage was done. "I can't," I said, my voice low and rough. "I can't stay, Allison. You betrayed me. You even considered it. And that's enough." She shook her head, tears streaming down her face again. "No, Jack, please, we can fix this. We can go to counseling. We can figure this out." I cut her off, holding up a hand. "No, I've already made up my mind. I'm leaving. This isn't something we can fix." Her sobs grew louder, her shoulders shaking as she took another step toward me. "What about us? What about everything we've been through? You're just going to throw it all away?" The weight of her words hit me hard, but I stayed firm. "You're the one who threw it away, Allison, not me." For a moment, she stood there, her face crumpling in anguish. She looked like she wanted to say something more, but the words never came. Instead, she just watched as I picked up my suitcase and walked past her. At the door, I hesitated. "I'll contact you in a few days to figure out the logistics. But for now, I need to go." And with that, I stepped out into the night, closing the door behind me, knowing that I was leaving behind not just my home, but the life I had once known. There was no turning back now. I stood on the front porch for a moment, the weight of the decision fully settling on my shoulders. The cool night air filled my lungs, sharp and clear, but it didn't bring the relief I had hoped for. Leaving was supposed to feel freeing, like breaking chains. But instead, I felt heavy, burdened by the shattered pieces of my marriage that I couldn't put back together. I could still hear Allison crying through the door, her sobs muffled by the walls between us. They clawed at something deep inside me, but I forced myself to push forward. I couldn't go back, not now. As I walked to the car, the past few hours replayed in my mind like some surreal nightmare. It still didn't feel real. Just that morning, I had been happy, excited, even about my deal at work, about the future. And now everything had changed. One text message, one lie had turned my world upside down. I hadn't just lost my wife tonight. I'd lost the woman I thought I knew, the future I thought we were building together. I threw my suitcase into the back seat of the car and sat behind the wheel, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. I didn't know where I was going, only that I had to leave. Driving without a destination seemed like the best option for now. I couldn't think clearly in that house, couldn't breathe around the weight of what had just happened. The engine roared to life, and I pulled out of the driveway without looking back. The quiet suburban streets were empty, lit only by the soft glow of streetlights. Everything looked the same as it had this morning, but I knew nothing was the same for me. I drove for hours, my mind racing as I replayed the confrontation over and over again. Every stop from Allison, every lie she had tried to explain away, echoed in my head. A part of me wanted to believe her that it was just fear or desperation that led her down this path, that she would have never gone through with it. So the other part of me, the part still seething with anger and hurt, knew that it didn't matter. Whether or not she had gone through with Simon's offer, she had already betrayed me by considering it, by hiding it. I pulled into a gas station on the outskirts of town, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead as I sat there, staring blankly at the dashboard. I should have felt something: rage, sadness, relief, anything. But I was numb. The hurt was so deep it hadn't even fully registered yet. It felt like I was walking through a fog, waiting for the real pain to set in. I stepped out of the car and leaned against it, taking a deep breath. I couldn't go on like this, stuck in my own head, letting the betrayal replay endlessly. I needed a plan, some kind of next step. But as much as I tried, I couldn't think beyond tonight. My marriage was over. I knew that much. But what came after that? I reached for my phone and hesitated. Who could I even call? I couldn't talk to family about this, not yet. It felt too raw, too personal. And my friends, would I even say to them that the woman I had built my life with had almost sold herself to another man for $2 million? The thought of explaining that to anyone made me feel sick, so I didn't call anyone. I just stood there staring at the road ahead, wondering what the hell I was supposed to do now. The future that had once felt so sure, so solid, now seemed like an empty stretch of highway with no signs, no directions, just miles and miles of uncertainty. The gas station attendant glanced at me from inside the store, probably wondering why I was just standing there like a lost soul in the middle of the night. And maybe that's exactly what I was: lost. I had never felt so adrift in my life. I had always been the guy with the plan, the one who knew where he was headed, even if the road was rough. But tonight I had no plan, no roadmap, nothing. And I thought about Allison again, about the woman I thought I knew. It hurt, knowing she had been so willing to break what we had built. I had given her my trust, my love, and she had been ready to throw it all away for a quick fix. That realization sank deep into my bones, and I knew that no matter what she said, no matter how many tears she shed, there was no going back. I got back into the car, turned the key, and pulled out of the gas station. As the miles rolled by, the road ahead remained a blur of headlights and darkness. But in that darkness, I felt something slowly start to lift the weight of trying to hold on to something that was already gone. The future was still uncertain, but for the first time that night, I realized I didn't need all the answers right away. All I needed to do was keep driving,